sometimes, as artists and performers, sometimes we don't give enough credit to those who work behind the scenes, particularly those who work backstage or behind the camera. There are those like Alfred Hitchcock, Sidney Pollack, Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, Woody Allen, Orson Welles, Quentin Tarantino, and Charlie Chaplin who have worked behind the scenes and performed on camera. And then there are those people who have not only worked behind the scenes, but they've also appeared on camera or on stage, and they were also writers or producers. And others were all four. Carl Reiner did all four. He's a producer, writer, director, and sometimes an actor. Do any of you know Rob Reiner by any chance? You know, the guy who directed When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, A Few Good Men, Visit Spinal Tap, Misery, and Stand By Me? Carl is Rob's father. You might not know Carl by name, but he was involved in some of the most well-known films and TV shows of all time. Sadly, Carl left us recently at the age of 98. To any of you who probably have never heard of him before, or maybe you're just a casual fan who liked his stuff, let me give you a bit of an introduction as to who exactly he was in terms of his career. And I do want to explain a little bit why I appreciated him so much. He did not become a household name until the 1950s when he was on the Sid Caesar variety show, Your Show of Shows.
So if I want a steak, I have to pay for it with real money. I want a real steak.
They don't serve meat here.
Well, then let's go somewhere else. Hey, what is he eating? I'll have that spaghetti. I'll have that, yeah.
That's not spaghetti, sir. That's spagooty. Cabbage extract and cauliflower derivative. It looks like spaghetti, so we call it spagooty.
He has teamed up with Mel Brooks numerous times, and Mel and Carl became lifelong friends. They did a sketch that became their trademark, known as the 2,000-Year-Old Man.
In the year 28 there was an old farmer, and a gentleman came to his land and said, "I'm so thirsty, may I have a little dipper milk?" And he said, "Certainly, go over to the barrel." He not knowing that the barrel of milk had soured, see? So this poor beggar man came to the barrel and opened up from the top and looked in and looked down and went, "Cheese!"
They recreated the sketch numerous times on numerous shows. They even once did an animated special together in 1975.
Could you give us the secret of your longevity?
Well, the major thing is that I never, ever touch fried food.
As a writer, he was involved in writing films, including The Thrill of It All. James Garner plays a maternity doctor whose wife, Doris Day, gets asked to be the spokesperson for a product called Happy Soap. The rest is underrated comedy.
You're on.
Oh, hello. I'm a Beverly Boyer, and I'm a pig.
Pig?
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 Okay, I can't really explain why The Thrill of It All is funny. It's just one of those things where it's so far-fetched, but it's good kind of far-fetched. It's really funny. It's surprising because this movie and the other movies I'm going to mention, they are not on any streaming services, so that's why checking these movies out is essential. As a director, Carl was involved in some pretty decent films. Some people recognize, others people don't, including the Steve Martin comedies All of Me, The Man with Two Brains, which he also wrote, and 1979's The Jerk, which I actually really liked. The Jerk.
Are you kidding? Page 73, Johnson, Navin, R. I'm somebody now. Millions of people look at this book every day. This is the kind of spontaneous publicity, your name in print, that makes people.
There are more films he directed, including the comic with Dick Van Dyke. Which, by the way, if you never heard of the comic, it's basically a film where Dick plays a Stan Laurel type character who falls victim to the rise of sound and his own excesses. And actually, Carl himself appears as a film producer in it. Summer Rental in the 80s, and the 1977 film Oh God. The story about a grocery store clerk, played by singer John Denver, has an encounter with, well, God himself, played by comedian George Burns. This film eventually spawned 2 sequels.
But if you're so involved with us...
Yeah?
How can you permit all the suffering that goes on in the world?
How can I permit the suffering?
Yeah.
I don't permit the suffering. You do. Free will. All the choices are yours.
Choices? What choices?
You can love each other, cherish and nurture each other, you can kill each other.
Sometimes Carl would even make appearances in his own films, like in The Jerk, for example.
This little handle is like a magnet. Your eyes are constantly drawn to it, and you end up cockeyed. Now, as a director, I am constantly using my eyes, and this optograph device has caused irreparable harm to my career.
Sometimes he would even be an actor, acting in films like The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, and he actually had a supporting role in the Oceans trilogy with George Clooney, and making cameos in films like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and most recently, Toy Story 4. And as far as his TV appearances, unbelievable. The list is nearly endless.
Tell him we're not kidding you.
Listen, Carl, they're not kidding right now. Shall we do a sketch about this?
We did one on Kid Caesar's show. I played you.
I was in with the third grade teachers.
No, she's not here, but who was she?
Her name was Miss Eisenstadt, and she married one of the teachers in PS 92.
I see. Well, that's why, you see, we couldn't bring the two together. And,
That's why we're on the National Safety Council's enemies list.
I didn't know that.
You were in a coma when the list was published.
Well, which coma, Jeffrey? The Jell-O coma?
No, when you had that nightmare and ate your pillow. In this razzle-dazzle world of television, each new season sets the networks in a spin. After many years, I have a strong suspicion. It's a weird whiz we're in.
Now, while those accomplishments are really good, there is one thing that he is remembered for that will go down in history as one of the best TV shows of all time, as the creator, writer, producer, and sometimes actor in one of my favorite shows of all time, probably my favorite show of all time, The Dick Van Dyke Show.
The Dick Van Dyke Show.
The Dick Van Dyke Show ran on CBS from 1961 to 1965, lasting about 5 seasons, and it is probably the funniest show I have ever seen in my life.
Who we are?
Lady.
The show was so unique, mainly because it's a show that is not only hilarious, but it was also very smart. Almost every line in this movie was funny, even if you've seen it 100 times. While I Love Lucy was a precursor to all the sitcoms that would follow, The Dick Van Dyke Show perfected it by having the right ingredients that make good sitcoms funny.
A man-eating bed.
These hands are registered with the police department as lethal weapons. Now, I'm obliged by law to tell you that first.
Rob?
Well, thanks for the warning.
The show has 2 settings, Rob and Laura Petrie's house, and Rob's workplace, as one of 3 writers of The Alan Brady Show. This is the series that introduced us to Rob Petrie, his wife Laura, her son Richie, and Rob's writing partners, Sally Rogers and Buddy Sorrell.
Do I have any right to walk up and yank?
I dropped my spoonie.
I'll get it.
No, it's all right. I'll get it, darling.
Try to stop her before she gets in the door.
Would you?
Yeah, that's probably good. Yeah, well, look.
Hi. I'll say hello to you two later. Where's this tall, good-looking, charming priest you want?
It was a show that has gotten me through really tough times. It helped me get through my teeth surgery last year. It serves as an educational tool for me as to how to do physical comedy well.
I am not clowning.
Will it?
What?
How's your foot?
How does it look?
Carl himself would appear rarely in the series as Alan Brady, a nutcase host who does not like his son-in-law Melvin Cooley.
Well, when you're number 7 in the national ratings, you can ignore things like this.
17, Alan.
Shut up, Mel, and
You see what I mean? I've been trying to tell you.
Shut up, Mel. He's still better than you.
But he is also temperamental and funny.
Laura, what the heck are you doing here?
Well,
If you like to see ruins, why don't you go to Greece?
Well, you're not ruined.
Alan, really?
First my leg, then my hair. What are you after, my liver?
Well, Alan, I came to apologize and to tell you personally that I'd like to try to explain.
Explain what? You got a big mouth.
At the heart of the Dick Van Dyke Show are two things. One, Carl's attention to detail when he writes human characters, and two, Dick Van Dyke's spot-on physical comedy.
A mensch, the greatest human being I ever met in my life. Unique, irreplaceable man. For some reason, Carl had a deep understanding about human behavior and what motivated people to do what they do.
Oh, thank you. We'll be right down. The Coast Guard down, Bummer. Where? Oh, who cares to bring them into port now? Who are they you are? I don't know, Millie.
Oh, Alan said you saved my job. What'd you win?
Oh, I won a dryer and a rotis.
If the absorbitron was really working, I wouldn't have any thumbs. And I've got my thumbs.
Carl understood there's no such thing as an adult. An adult is his costume and mannerism that a kid puts on in order to make it through life.
Rob, there are no series of tests in the world that are going to convince me that is not our baby.
Oh, honey, I don't blame you. You can't face the facts. Poor kid.
Oh, Rob!
Well, honey, that's probably the Peters. Now brace yourself.
Rob, nobody is taking this baby. Do you hear me? Nobody.
Or I think it'd be better if you went to your room. I can handle it.
I am staying right here.
Local firemen were called out an hour ago to try and rescue a 9-week-old kitten stranded on top of a huge elm tree on Maple Street. So far, the frightened cat has eluded their grasp. Poor little pussycat.
The show was so good that it won so many Emmys and inspired a reunion special in 2004 called simply The Dick Van Dyke Show Revisited, with many of the original cast members returning. There is also a sequel series with a new cast that Carl created called The New Dick Van Dyke Show, but unlike the original, this one only lasted 2 seasons. Now you may be wondering, why do I love Carl's writing so much? Well, the way he writes characters, his style is never be realistic and be childlike. I think that it seems only fair that all comics have that inner child that loves to run around and play and make goofy jokes, sometimes trip here and there. There's an art to writing adults who act like kids trying to be adults. There's that childish humor that goes into his writing style. And his directing style matches that too. And his humor is more childish, but in some ways it almost represents us in some ways, that we're kids at heart. He shows us the inner child in all of us, really. And at 98, he was still doing stuff. You know, he was doing stuff on social media. And The Dick Van Dyke Show and Carl, if it hadn't been for Carl, I don't think that show would have been as funny as it was. It's hard to really explain why his writing is so good without actually having seen his work, but the best I can describe it is that his approach to comedy is very simple. According to him, he said, you have to imagine yourself as not somebody very special, but somebody very ordinary. If you imagine yourself as somebody very normal, and if it makes you laugh, it's going to make everybody laugh. If you think of yourself as something very special, you'll end up as a pendant and a bore. If you start thinking about what's funny, you won't be funny actually. It's like walking. How do you walk? If you start thinking about it, you'll trip.
If you're working for an audience, you become aware of colors. I think if you were painting, it'd be the same thing, depending on what you're going for. If you're going for a pastoral painting, you say, gee, I need some sunlight coming through here. Otherwise, it looks like it's a rain scene. And if you're doing a comedy and you've gone a while with a serious thing and nobody's laughing, you say, geez, I'm responsible to the audience because they're looking at a comedy show. Unless you're making a serious comment and you're not going to do comedy that week. But you become aware of what your responsibilities are, and also you'll be embarrassed. to not get a laugh.
At the age of 98, Carl had a very interesting approach to how he made it through all the way to his 90s.
First thing in the morning, before I have coffee, I read the obits.
Seriously?
Yes, if I'm not in it, I'll have breakfast.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for helping me learn how to write comedy correctly.